What's up, all of my people? Thank you guys for tapping in. It's your boy Kenneth, 100 Years of Wealth. Um, Thank you for logging on to this video right here. I'm gonna show you guys what I'm doing in the basement. You guys will see some different videos of this, but I am gonna show you in this video how I did the drywall, mud, and tape on my own. For most people that I talk to that are taking on some sort of project, there's certain parts of the project that they feel confident about, and then certain things that they just feel like it's so out of their realm that they don't even want to start the project, and that's how they end up paying for it. And there's nothing wrong with paying for a service, but if you can do it on your own and maybe you actually plan on using that skill set in the future at some point, it might be worth it for you just to dive in, do some DIY research, watch some videos, watch some content over and over again, get some different perspectives, watch all the do's and don'ts, and then go at it yourself. And as long as, like, if you make a mistake, it's not going to be like a expensive mistake, or a real like dangerous mistake, then I would say it's worth trying on your own, and you should be able to figure it out, especially something like this. So if you see at the start of the video, you see that I whipped up the drywall mud in a just like a silver bowl that's probably better, or more likely used for baking, as well as using the actual, whatever they're called, the little spinner thing that is used to, like, the whisk. I use the whisk because I've seen videos where people have the drill with the extender on it that whips up the concrete or the mud nice and tight. But at the time of this video, I didn't get one yet. I hadn't got one. I just got one the other day. Really easy to find. You can find one of those on Amazon. I'll make a video on that too. But I whipped it up really nice, and this. If you look at the start of the video, you could see I probably should have used a little bit more mud, but it worked out fine. What I learned was that you need it to be moist as you apply the paper so that the paper can lay down all the way. If you don't have it spread enough and it's not moist enough, it's not going to grab the paper. That's where you're going to start to have bubbles and just a lot of the paper not adhering to the surface. So here in this video, I started off by doing a little bit of pre-filler on that space because there's a little bit of a crack there, and a larger crack as you went down, or a larger space between the drywall slabs as you went down. And so that's the reason why I started off with some filler, and then I went over the space to make sure there was a wide enough and wet enough surface area of the thin set or fast set 20, and then I rolled the tape on. I did the tape. Like I said, a lot of times, even for myself, there's a lot of DIY projects I didn't want to do, just because I'm like, the tape, the mud, that's going to be a headache. What if I do it wrong? But I'm like, wait a minute, I actually did this before, and at first, I might have had to stick some of the paper, but it wasn't that hard to do. And like I said, this is one of those things where if you make a mistake, pull the paper off, and add some more mud, and then reapply it. It's one of those things where it's not rocket science. Basically, make sure that you spread the liquid mud evenly enough so that the paper lies down, and then it'll dry, and then you'll just come back. Not even, you're not going to wait till it dries, but you'll come back and throw another layer on and flatten it out. So that's what I did on the first one. As you see, that paper went on nice, applied well, and then I quickly moved on to the next one. So advice for DIYers, like, the main thing is, if you're using, depending on what mud you get, this is thin set 20, which means that within about 20 minutes, that stuff is going to start to harden up and make it really hard to use. As it gets thicker, you can use it for certain things where you still are able to spread it flat, maybe to cover screws, or to pre-fill some spaces between drywall slabs. But you definitely can't use mud as it gets harder for paper, right? To put the tape, because that's where you're going to have a lot of problems where it's not adhering all the way. So always make sure that you are keeping your mud moist, and before you apply paper, make sure it's moist. Okay. So here, as you see, like, my whole thing is this: I don't plan on going necessarily into the construction business where I'm going to be like doing this for people. If so, I'd approach it with a way more professional, I'd have my tool belt on, wouldn't be using my hands most likely. I would be exercising all the latest techniques because, I'd be a professional and I'd have all the experience. But in this, you see, I made the mistake there, dropped the tape, had to pull the tape off. And I'm like, all right, you know what? The mud wasn't wet enough. Let me go get some new mud. First, I'm gonna fill this in, but my point is this is for the DIYers, right? This is not really for the professionals to really critique. Yeah, feel free to critique in the comments and let me know what on the next project I can do better, or answers, put some tips for people. But this is really for the DIYer. That it may take you just a little bit longer, but you're not doing this professionally. You're not doing this on a mass scale. This is your garage. This is your basement, and you're just trying to save a few $1,000s, because trust me, people will try and, I don't want to say rip you off, but they're going to give you these quotes that in my mind they're not so equivalent to the work, right? The drywall, each sheet of drywall costs $20. This is like the thicker drywall that is mold resistant. So if you have, on this wall, basically about 4 or 5 sheets of drywall, that's only about $100 worth of drywall. The mud is probably $20 a pack, right? So I had this mud in my garage from like a previous project. So 2 packs of mud, another $40, $50, and then I actually had a whole bucket of drywall screws, right, that I had for years. Probably paid $40, $50 for that, right? So to put up drywall and to do your own mud, the actual material cost might just be a few $100s, but you'll have people come out and give you a quote for 3, 4 grand because they just know you don't know how to do it. You probably don't have like a bunch of people that are readily available to give you a quote, and they want to probably make $1,000 a day, especially if they're gonna have someone working with them. So my point is that these are the types of projects that if you got a little, can do and a little, try, and you should be able to figure it out. Even if you're moving a little slower. For me, this video, like I time lapse a lot of stuff, but this was probably me working for about an hour or so, breaks in between because my son was here, and taking a break with him, going upstairs, getting some food. But this is not a lot of time that I've spent on this project, but I think of it as, how they say, one of the tips of getting rich is pay yourself first. I'm like, hey, look, unless I can be making money in my business, then it might just make more sense for me to be saving money on a home project as opposed to kicking out 3 to 4 grand for someone to come in, do my basement walls. I'm like, hey, look, I'll spend $500 on materials overall, and do this over a couple of months, maybe an hour or two per Saturday or something like that. And also it works, and it helps me because in the future I plan on doing fix and flips projects for myself, or just being available for friends or family that might need something like this done. So I really do advise people that have a house that they might be doing some work on, and especially people that might want to do some fix and flips or DIY type stuff later on for investment purposes. You could save yourself a lot of money in the long run by knowing how to do these projects. And then also, if you're into DIY or investment, buying properties, holding them, flipping them, whatever you're planning on doing, this gives you a whole different vision when you go out and look at properties. If you're looking at properties and there's holes in the wall and it just, the ceilings cave in, then if you don't know how to do this stuff, you're looking at it in the true retail cost of those projects, right? You're looking at it like, wow, this is going to be a lot of money to bring this house up to speed. Me, I'll go in there and say, okay, look, if we don't have mold issues, or rotted wood issues like in the frame, things like that, drywall is ultra cheap. And it's one of those things where you can redo a whole room and make it look brand new for probably $1,000 a room, right? Depending on the size, of course, right? So if I'm looking at a project, I'm walking into a 3, 4 bedroom house, and I'm like, hey, all the rooms are trashed, let's weigh it out. I might only have to spend 4 or 5 grand to bring those rooms back into like a brand new status. So that's another thing I would say. if you plan on doing that in the future and you really want to up your profit margin and not always, cutting things close because you've spent a lot of money on labor and contractors. Um, and of course, I don't mean for everything, right? You don't see me in there building the house, right? I'm doing the things that are pretty safe for one, and all it takes is just you paying attention, you being able to measure. You're probably gonna bust your knuckles a couple times with the drill, or a screw's gonna poke you, things like that. But to me, at the end of the day, not only the gaining of the knowledge and saying, okay, I figured out how to make this look good and work perfectly, and pretty much do it up to code. Um, but there's savings within that as you go forward. So key to me just going through and like tightening up some or adding some screws to some spaces that were missing it. You just want to make sure, obviously, your drywall is fully connected at every spot. As you see, there's a ton of screws all over, so it's very secure. But if you do have a couple of areas where you just happen to miss screws, then you'll end up having like a wall that moves a little bit. But if you spread it out pretty well and you hit everything pretty good, you're not going to have that issue. All right, so here you see I finished up hitting some screws in the corner, a place that I had missed a couple of screws, and needed to go back and shore it up to ensure that there was no loose drywall spots. Um, I'm sure I have tons of drywall in my hair, so shout out to all the Rastas that are doing their own drywall. I am not a Rasta, but much respect to Rastafari culture. But just wanted to make that disclosure. But anyways, so as you see in the corner there, on the left corner, I finished up. Well, not finished up, but I tightened it up a little bit more with some mud, filling in some spaces. There's still a little edge there, and then I went back on the other side and added some new wet mud so that I can go ahead and lay that first little piece of tape there, and then go from there. So it's just step by step, as you can see. Like, the reason why I made the video this way is just to really show you the mistakes. I've sped up certain things, but I'm not really cutting much out. That way you can see that it's all doable and fixable. That, like I said before, the entire video without like speeding it up was probably only about an hour or so long. Maybe longer, because there was moments where I was just not in the video, but me actually actively doing this, maybe an hour or so. And that's with the mistakes, with me having to retape, to pull tape all the way off. You probably couldn't see it in some of the sped up parts, but I chunked off pieces of mud that were there that I did too much on. So my point is that this is doable, and it's something that you could say, okay, hey, look, I'm going to take this weekend and go at it, and you'll get it done. You know what I mean? Like, you make a comparison. If someone out there is going to do it for you for real cheap and you trust their work, all right, cool, get it done. But if it's going to cost you a couple grand or $1,000 for something that might take you an hour or two, you're better off just trying to figure it out and learn it yourself, because it is doable. It is something that you can learn. So trust me on that. All right, so as you can see here, I got the corner on, or not the corner, but that space over there on. And I only did it that length because you have the other seam going up. So I basically ran the tape to that seam that was going upward. Might not be the most professional thing to do. I wasn't sure of the exact tactic there, but the joints and the seams are secured. So as you see, I went over that tape once again with some additional mud to flatten it completely out, or not flatten it completely out because it was already flattened, but just to put that additional seal on top. And now we move on to the next space. All right, you guys. So while I am, as you can see on the larger screen, I'm just continuing on with my mud, getting a solid layer on top of that tape that's done in the corner there, and like I said, it's one of those things where it's kind of like touch and go to a certain degree for us new guys, right? You'll see videos online where like the people that have been doing it for a while hit it with like one swipe, one direction, one swipe back, and it all works out perfect. It's okay if it doesn't work like that, because you you know, if you're not doing this often, then you're likely to not really have that skill set. You know, you can try it and pick it up as you go. You'll figure it out. You'll get better. But I'm just saying, don't let that hold you back. Not knowing that up front should not hold you back, because you'll likely learn that little skill set or learn those tricks while you're doing this. Like on the first run, I had to kind of, you know, go under and go back and figure it out. But in the left hand corner, you'll see the video of us throwing up this slab of drywall right there, where there's the pole, where there's the vent box. The person helping me is my stepdad, and he actually has he lives in Georgia, but he was in California for a little while and came to help me out. But you know, when him and my mom first got together back in the days, he used to work for Caltrans. So he was, you know, a contractor, or I won't say a contractor, but he did construction. He was a carpenter. So all the stuff growing up, he would be showing me different things at our house, how to like build fences. And he's probably like one of the main reasons why I have that, like that DIY mentality, and I always want to, you know, try to do it myself if I can. So he came through and he helped me, you know, put the drywall up the right way, because I was going to do it myself. But the way I do it is more, like I said, DIY. I'm measuring, but I ain't measuring as good as he was. And I'm like patching things together. I'm going to make it look right. I'm going to make it look good, but at the same time, it may take me a little longer, just because I don't know. I'm not good with like doing things a formal way sometimes, you know? But anyway, so we measured it out. We got the that piece put up, and it came out perfect based on his measurements. There was a couple of adjustments we had to make, but it all worked out. But as you can see behind the wall, or the drywall that we're putting up, that's all the insulation and the wood framing that I did myself as well. You know, I'm gonna make a video showing that stuff, you know, going a little bit backwards, but I did all that myself too. It wasn't that hard or complicated. Just you gotta have the right tools for certain things. Like if you're gonna drill a hole in concrete so that you can drill a anchor bolt or some sort of a concrete screw for your wood, you gotta have the right type of drill. You gotta have a drill with a hammer setting, or it'll be very difficult. It might just be, you know, too hard to get through with a normal drill. So keep that in mind. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that process too, so you could see what we were doing there and how we got that up. But yeah, putting drywall up, you know, having two people is key. It's key. Boom. Alright guys, you can see that little window I popped up there in the corner is basically before I got the all the insulation in, before I completed putting the drywall up. So I'm gonna make a different video where it's slowed down and I'm walking through showing that whole process, but just wanted to kind of, as I complete this, you could see where this project started. The wood frame I was talking about, as you can see, I'm testing electrical. It's doing a whole lot here, but this is over a couple month process where I spent maybe an hour here, an hour there on the weekend, a couple hours, just going along as I could, because obviously I work and I have a child and I have a wife, so there's, you know, obligations and responsibilities. But you know, I set it out like, hey, I'm going to do this over the next few months. That's it. Since it wasn't an urgent project, it's the basement, there's nothing going on down there. That's the reason why I wasn't really in like a crazy rush. So you can see there the screws that I use to you know, screw the wood frame into the floor, what drill I use. But I'm going to come back and do a full video for you guys on that. But just so you guys could see, this is all, you know, DIY stuff. This is all, even the electrical I did myself. But what I did was, after I had a couple of like people that do this professionally come and give me some advice, tell me what I needed to do, and of course you always turn off the electrical prior to working on anything. But this was basically just adding outlets and connecting them to a main source. So you obviously have to cut off the main source, figure out how you're going to ground the electrical, and then run the electrical. And then once you have everything all dialed in, then you turn the electrical on. Keep your hands away from live wires, and you should remain safe. But we'll do a whole video where I go through all the steps I went through on that. But I just wanted to give you guys a visual so you guys could see where this room started, how I did this all on my own without, you know, any assistance besides when my stepdad helped me put up the drywall. But my point is that this is all doable, right? Like all the different 2x4s are spaced by about 16 inches roughly, which is the code for most areas. We're in Los Angeles, that's the code. They want to keep it 16 inches apart, and you want to keep it that way so that in the future, if you're going to hang something on the wall and you need to, you know, put something into an actual stud, there's a little support. But if you're going to put something into an actual stud, then you want to make sure that you kind of have an idea of where it is space-wise, so that you don't have to punch a bunch of holes and then patch up holes as you guess where the beam is, right? So you can just see me walking through my process, going through the electrical. I ran the electrical through the wood. I followed the best I could the professionals that I saw online, and then at the end of it, I actually had an electrician, a licensed electrician, come to the house, look at everything, and let me know if there was anything I needed to change or correct. And you know, you can see me testing and all that. So once again, just me showing you that this is all doable yourself. But with electrical, hey, if that's something that you don't want to do, don't do it, right? Like, you don't, this isn't some, electrical is not something where you want to play around with, right? Every time, I'll start back. The project started off super slow because I was scared to do my own electrical. And after a while, I was like, you know what I need to do is just go ahead and turn off the electrical. But then I'm like, how am I going to work in the dark? That's when you go and you buy yourself a headlamp, right? Like, I found a headlamp on Amazon for like $50 or something like that, or even less, and got that. And then that allowed me to do work with the electrical actually turned off, which is the safest way to do it, or the only way to do it, right? Of course, some electricians will tell you, oh, I've worked with live wires before. We're not electricians. We don't do that, right? So we turn off the wire. But yeah, you know, so this is something that, like I said, you can do if you're careful and you can follow instruction, and you can be disciplined about turning off the electrical and not being like, you know, naive about it and trying to be overzealous, you know, because that overzealous approach with something like electrical can cost you your life. So don't do it. All right, but back to this video. As you can see, I'm making my way, getting the tape done. I'm done with the middle section, even though I had a little hold up there. The middle section kind of came loose, and then I had to go and make some new mud, get some new wet mud, and and redo it so that it was moist enough to adhere, and I did that. So let's keep it pushing here. This at an